Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. As the title says, I am coming to you guys with my February wrap up and my March TBR. But before I get into all that, I want to give you guys a huge announcement. I'm going to Cuba this Friday. Today is Wednesday, March 8th. I'm about to be on that plane probably by the time this video goes up. So I'm really excited about that, and it's just going to be a brand new experience. If you guys have followed my channel or even looked at any of my earlier videos, one of my best friends, Mariah, she has co-founded this organization with her best friend Jasmine. It is called the African Diaspora Alliance, and basically they are all about delving into the African diaspora, our culture around the world, globally and internationally, and teaching the youth of Baltimore about themselves as a people. So last year they took a group of students to Cuba and they had an amazing time. So this year, because it was so successful, they're opening it up to more of the community and to more adults who would like to go on the trip as well. So of course I had to jump on that opportunity. I'm really excited. Keep an eye out because I'm thinking about doing a vlog for that. So I definitely want to take a lot of pictures and videos. So I'm really excited, and yeah, just thought I'd let you guys know. February was kind of like it was an okay reading month. I definitely wish I had finished more books, but I felt like the books that I did complete were definitely satisfying, and I felt like, you know, it definitely geared me up to read more in March. So the first book that I read was The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. I have a full video on this and I will link that down below, but I would have to say this is definitely a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend this to everybody. The second book that I read is really popular right now, especially because her first book, Everything is going to have a movie coming out this year, I think in May, so I'm definitely seeing that. But it was The Sun is also starred by Nicola Yoon. I would have to give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it and would highly recommend it. It follows two characters, two people. Natasha, who is a Jamaican American and her family is at risk of deportation. Daniel, who is a Korean American, and he's sort of at this time where he's going to begin applying for colleges and things like that, so he's feeling a lot of pressure from his family, and their lives paths sort of cross one day, and they sort of go into this whole story about, you know, their romance and their struggles with what's going on in their lives and how they're dealing with it. I felt like it was more realistic to where, yeah, you know, we like each other a lot, but we still got some shit going on that has to be addressed. I would have to say that I sort of would have preferred if there was no romance in it. Because I wasn't really getting a romance. I was sort of getting like, yeah, we're really in strong like with each other. I wouldn't say love, just because I don't believe love can just be found within the span. This wasn't even 24 hours, it's like 12 hours. The thing that sort of irked me about this book is that there was this random like best friend of Natasha. Like, she wasn't actively in the story, but she kept like making pop-ups here and there, just being mentioned and stuff, and I felt like her character could have been done away with. I almost would have liked this story better if Natasha and Daniel would have been best friends instead of supposed lovers, and sort of still went into how they were coping with, you know, the difference in cultures and prejudices and dealing with their situations as really good friends. I felt like that would have made a stronger story than having them randomly meet this one day and then having to have all this care for each other. Also, I really felt that the background stories given for all these secondary characters I really liked. You got Natasha's perspective and you got Daniel's perspective, but then you also sort of had this omniscient narrator that would come in and sort of go through everybody else's dirty laundry, so to speak, that was introduced in the book, and I really did like that. I really connected with these two characters, so I really enjoyed this book and I would definitely recommend it. The next book that I read was The Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl by Issa. I really enjoyed this book, and this book has a huge story for me. Okay, so she actually has a YouTube channel that's called, you know, the Awkward Black Girl. But when I started watching that, I don't think it was called that. I think it was called something else, and I didn't even realize it was the same person. So back in my freshman and sophomore year of undergrad, there was this YouTube series going around about, you know, all these awkward situations that you would be in, and it would be this girl Jay, and she was in the college life, and so it really connected with me and a lot of my friends. Like, I used to wait for her videos to come up, like on some serious stuff. And so in this show, so in her YouTube series, she went by Jay, and that's what I thought her name was, you know, Jay. Okay, cool. So when everyone kept talking about this HBO series Insecure and how it was the same girl, I was sort of like, it didn't really connect to me. So when I started reading her book, I was like, wait, I have watched this series before. So this is sort of like her memoir / how to survive guide in this society as an awkward black girl. And I really enjoyed it. She goes, it's not necessarily a play-by-play of what happened in her life, but it was sort of like what awkward moments and situations sort of led her to be the woman that she is. And, you know, to own up to her awkwardness and to sort of be that light for other black girls like her, or, you know, girls who can relate. I never knew she lived in Potomac, Maryland for a time. I was like, yo, that's why we connect so well in this book. I knew there was some kindred spirits in there between us, and, you know, just all her situations about the dial-up, you know, the top 8 in social media back in the day. But it was a very good read. I enjoyed it a lot. You know, it was humorous. You know, you really got that, like, you were talking to a girlfriend type feel when I was reading this book. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend this to anyone who wants to watch the show, anyone who has watched the show but has never really learned about her as a person. And I will definitely be putting the link to the YouTube series down below so you guys can check that out. I have Swing Time by Zadie Smith. I'm actually halfway through this book. I'm still reading it currently, and I would have to say this book was I don't know. I went into this book sort of blind. I didn't really know what to expect. This is my first Zadie Smith novel, so her writing style, and I would have to say it's very smooth. It's very, you know, easy flowing, and that's what I really enjoyed about this book. However, so far I would have to say it's not really holding my attention as much as I would like. You know, when I read a book, I sort of go deaf to the world, so to speak, and so when I'm reading this book, it's easy for me to get distracted and put down. But at the same time, if I see it laying somewhere, I'll pick it up and jump right back into the story. Really enjoying the sort of the narrator's perspective, sort of say. She and her best friend Tracy, this is who the story follows, but it's an unnamed narrator, and they sort of, you know, it's talking about their time growing up in England, and both being biracial, you know, both having white and black parents, and sort of like that social implications of that, and this love of dance that they both seem to share that sort of holds them together as friends. At some points I sort of pitied the narrator just because she seemed a little bit unsure of herself and uncertain, and that tends to be, you know, even from my experience coming from a bicultural background, you know, you go through this time and period where you are confused about your identity and where you fit in and things like that. So I sort of connected with that, but it even goes into, you know, goes back and forth to when she's an adult and she's still sort of in the same place trying to figure out where she fits in. The one thing I really am not feeling about this book is the character of Tracy. That girl, so far I've only experienced her in this book as a child and sort of like as a preteen / adolescent, and she is a straight up like complete asshole. Like, I couldn't see myself being friends with her. I couldn't see myself wanting to be friends with her, and I definitely wouldn't have any child of mine hanging around her little fast ass. And I probably won't mention this in my March wrap up, but I may do a separate book review once I have finished it. So this is sort of what I have been reading in February and what I will continue to read through March. Alright, so now we're moving on to the things that I want to read in March. And the first book I have already read, and it was Amazeball, Persepolis by Marjane Sartrapi. This is sort of her memoir, and it goes into her perspective and experiences growing up in Iran. And it's a graphic novel, my first graphic novel that I ever read, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. It really shone light to a lot of the biases and preconceived notions that I had about, you know, growing up in the Middle East and things like that. It was a definitely much more liberal and much more, you know, relatable than I would have thought. And it was very humorous. Like, it was some deep, dark shit in this book because they're going through wartime and they're going through, you know, political intrigue and things like that, and all these types of scandals that are going on, and sort of like religious factors coming into play. So you really see her family sort of struggle to remain independent in their beliefs, and, you know, wanting to bring their daughter up to be a strong, independent woman. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I really enjoyed her voice and her humor and her sarcasm. Definitely, you know, connected me to her. So I would give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. But I was sort of blown because I didn't realize that it was broken up into parts. So this is part 1. There's actually a part 2, and I tried to find it in the library, but they said they had lost it. How do you only have one copy of a book and you lose it? Like, that's neither here nor there, but I'm really going to try and find part 2. The next book that I am looking to read, and I'm hoping to bring this to Cuba with me, and that is Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This has gotten a lot of good feedback. I actually have 2 books by her, this and Half of a Yellow Sun. I have not read either yet. I know a lot of people are now currently reading her TED Talk, We Should All Be Feminists, but this is a book I definitely wanted to pick up. I think it follows 2 characters where they're both trying to immigrate to America, but the girl, she does come through to America, so now she's now an African American, but not in the sense of Black American, but she's now an immigrant she's migrated from Africa. And then the second character, who I think is her love interest, he gets barred or denied access to America, so he has to go through the UK. And it sort of talk about, I think, their different experiences being in these new countries. I sort of had like a weird, like, I'm not sure what I want to read in March, to be quite honest. I was just looking at my bookshelf and I was just like, none of these books are speaking to me right now. I'm feeling like I want some fantasy. I'm feeling like I want some spiritualness. It's like one of the only like pastel color books that I have. So it's God Wears Lipstick, a Kabbalah for Women by Karen Berg. And this is actually a signed copy. It says, "Love always, Karen Berg." So I'm just like, hey, Karen. It explains the spiritual advantage of women and the power of soulmates and the true purpose of life. And sort of like a discussion about managing relationships, to reincarnation, to the sacred power and meaning of sex. That's all I know about the book, so I will let you guys know how that goes. And then I took a trip down to old handy dandy library, their champ ass selection. Let me tell you, one, I went to the library closest to me. They're closed 6 months for renovation, so then I had to go drive an extra 15 minutes to another library. And let me tell you, they gave me such a hard time trying to get this library card. Then their selections were like, everything was all disorganized and picked up. You know, I went there looking for Persepolis Part 2. They didn't have it. So I started, you know, scanning the bookshelves, and I found some really good ones. So first thing I found, I was like, yes. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found this in the library. And that's Kindred by Octavia Butler. And this is the graphic novel edition of the book. I've been wanting to read this, and I'm in a graphic novel kick, and the art is amazing. Like, I was just flipping through the pages, and I'm just like, you can just get feels off the artwork alone. So it's a time traveling book about this Black woman. She's in the 1970s, but then somehow she time travels back in time to pre-Civil War America, and now she's like on a plantation, and she's sort of like around her, you know, her ancestors and her relatives, and dealing with all that shit going on. She's really well known for her fantasy and sci-fi, and you really don't hear too much about African American, especially African American women, being held high standards for their sci-fi and fantasy. So I was definitely happy to find this. The next book I also got is Falling in Love with Hominids by Nalo Hopkins. She's also well known for her sci-fi and fantasy, and this is just sort of like a collection of short stories. Junot Diaz said she's a powerful writer with an imagination that most of us would kill for. So I saw this book and it just stuck out to me, like her fro was like growing, and it's like she looks so serene and at peace. So it's a beautiful book, and I really wanted to pick it up, so there we go. The last book that I want to read, I'm currently reading it now, and it's Shiver by Maggie Steifvater. She's best known for the Raven Cycle, and apparently everyone has read that and thinks she shits gold. So I didn't see any of the Raven Cycle, but I did see this, and I think this is a trilogy, and I've seen a couple booktubers talk about it, and it's about werewolves, but they're not in your typical sense, like their changing depends upon the temperature, and there's a romance in here, and I'm really liking it so far. So I will let you guys know how it goes. So that is all that I have for today. That is my February wrap up and March TBR. Keep an eye out for that vlog, guys, and I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions or comments, please hit me up down below. And if you like this video, hit like, subscribe, you know, follow me on the other social media realms. But you guys take care, peace, love, and happy reading.